He walks into every room needing to be seen. He talks louder, laughs harder, posts more. But Machiavelli wouldn't be impressed, he'd be alarmed. Because a man who can't survive without attention isn't powerful. He's weak, and worse, he's predictable. Most people think weakness shows up in silence and passivity and retreat. But Machiavelli knew better. He saw the truth: the loudest man in the room is often the most fragile. Not because he lacks talent or intelligence, but because his entire identity depends on being noticed. In this video, we're going to expose one of the most humiliating, dangerous, and invisible forms of weakness in modern men: display addiction, the compulsive need to be seen, validated, and praised. It's the kind of behavior that looks like confidence until the spotlight fades. And here's what separates the powerful from the powerless: the strong man builds in silence. The weak man performs for applause. One becomes untouchable, the other becomes a puppet. If you want to learn how to detect this weakness and make sure it never controls you, watch closely. Because once you understand what Machiavelli saw, you'll never look at men the same way again. He walks into the room with a nervous smile, already forming explanations in his head. You haven't asked, but he's already preparing his defense: why he said what he said, why he did what he did, why you should understand. His words are polite, his tone is soft, but beneath the surface there's a subtle tremor. And Machiavelli would have seen it instantly. This isn't communication, it's a survival tactic. Weak men explain, strong men decide. That's the brutal truth. And yet, in today's world where approval is currency and perception is everything, overjustification has become a silent epidemic. It's the compulsion to explain yourself, not because you're misunderstood, but because you're afraid not to be liked. Machiavelli saw it in royal courts and political chambers, but it's everywhere now. Boardrooms, friendships, social media, even within families. It's the man who can't sit with the discomfort of silence after making a choice. He needs others to agree with him, not because he's unsure of the facts, but because he's unsure of himself. This is the first crack in the armor, and it always shows. A confident man makes a decision and allows the results to speak. He understands that not everyone will approve, and he's okay with that. His inner compass is intact. But the weak man, he second-guesses not just in private, but out loud to everyone who will listen. He rephrases, he repeats, he preemptively apologizes, and the more he speaks, the less authority he has. Why? Because power doesn't ask for permission. Overjustification isn't just annoying, it's dangerous. It signals that a man is emotionally unanchored, that his identity is based not on internal clarity but external validation. He's not speaking to express conviction, he's speaking to manage perception, to be liked, to be seen as reasonable. And that need, however subtle, makes him vulnerable to influence, manipulation, and collapse under pressure. Machiavelli called it for what it was begging for permission to exist. And here's the cold part: people can sense it. Even if they can't name it, they feel it. That slight over-explaining, the hedging language, the defensive smile, it erodes trust. Because when a man explains too much, it suggests he doesn't truly believe in what he's saying. And if he doesn't, why should anyone else? Overjustification is born from fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, fear of losing acceptance. And fear in the wrong hands is easy to exploit. Machiavelli, ever the predator of human psychology, knew this well. He didn't attack the justifier. He listened. He nodded. He gave small affirmations, just enough to make the man feel seen, understood, valued. And in return, loyalty, dependence, devotion. Not because he earned it through truth, but because he fed the fear. See, when you need to be understood to act, you are no longer free. You are held hostage by other people's reactions. And those who recognize that those who know what to say to make you feel approved own you, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. This is why Machiavelli didn't just watch for overjustification in others, he hunted it within himself. Every time he felt the urge to explain his reasoning too deeply to win someone over with words, he stopped. He asked himself, am I speaking from conviction or from insecurity? And if it was insecurity, he chose silence. He chose the discomfort. He chose the power of not needing to explain. Because silence, when chosen deliberately, is a weapon. It leaves space for others to project certainty onto you. It commands respect not through noise but through presence. And when a man can sit in that silence without flinching, without apologizing, he becomes rare, he becomes dangerous. So ask yourself, do you speak to be heard or to be approved? Do you make decisions and own them, or do you dress them up in justification so you feel safe? Do you explain because it's useful or because you're scared to be misunderstood? These aren't just questions, they're checkpoints. And if you're brave enough to answer them honestly, you'll see the truth. Most people don't need to speak, they need to stop explaining. Because a man who can choose silence, a man who can act without applause or approval, that's a man Machiavelli wouldn't fear, but would never try to manipulate either. He's the guy everyone likes, always agreeable, always smiling, always helpful. He avoids conflict, diffuses tension, and apologizes before you've even processed the problem. At first glance, he seems kind, compassionate, maybe even emotionally intelligent. But Machiavelli would look deeper. He wouldn't see kindness. He'd see a warning sign submission disguised as virtue. This is weaponized niceness, not kindness, not empathy, not moral strength. It's fear. And once you recognize it, you'll never see the world the same way again. Machiavelli understood that true power doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes weakness wears a smile. And the most dangerous weak men aren't the ones who shout, but the ones who play nice to survive. The ones who fold themselves into whatever shape the room demands just to avoid rejection. They call it kindness. But deep down, it's something darker. A desperate strategy to avoid being disliked. A strong man can be kind. But his kindness is deliberate, selective, and never compromises his self-respect. He says no when it matters. He sets boundaries. He speaks truth even if it makes others uncomfortable. But the weak man, he trades authenticity for approval. He thinks the path to acceptance is paved with compliments, passive agreement, and self-erasure. And here's the tragic part. When that niceness doesn't give him the validation he craves, it curdles. The mask slips. The sweet words turn sarcastic. The soft tone sharpens. Bitterness leaks out, passive aggression creeps in. Because his kindness was never real. It was a transaction. And when the transaction fails, the resentment begins. Machiavelli saw this all the time, especially in court where men who wanted favor would flatter and appease, hoping proximity to power would protect them. But he never trusted them. Not because they were weak in body, but because their loyalty was built on fear, not conviction. And fear, it cracks under pressure. A man who avoids tension at all costs cannot be trusted in chaos. He'll agree with you in private, then betray you in public. He'll smile to your face, then fold the moment someone stronger enters the room. Because the foundation of his identity isn't truth, it's external safety. And this is what Machiavelli feared most people who lack an inner spine, but compensate with outward softness. Because they're not stable, they shift with pressure. They collapse under expectation. And worst of all, they don't even know they're doing it. They think they're being good, being generous, being nice. But niceness isn't the same as character. Kindness is a principle. Niceness is a performance. And when performance becomes your only survival mechanism, you become easy to control, easy to manipulate, easy to own. Machiavelli knew that all it took was a bit of praise, a job offer, a little attention, and these men would pledge themselves to you not because they respected you, but because you made them feel safe. And once safety becomes their god, they will betray anything to maintain it, including you. That's why Machiavelli didn't fight people-pleasers. He used them. He gave them roles. Let them feel chosen. Let them feel included. He never had to ask for loyalty, they gave it freely. Because to lose him meant losing the only validation their fragile self-image depended on. They didn't serve him because he was a great leader. They served him because he filled the emotional vacuum inside them. He became the source of their identity. And that's the most dangerous power of all, not forcing someone to obey you, but making them believe they chose to. So how do you recognize weaponized niceness in the real world? It's the man who agrees too quickly, apologizes when he isn't wrong, laughs at jokes he doesn't like, avoids eye contact in conflict, smiles when he wants to scream. He calls it patience, compassion, humility, but it's not. It's fear of not being liked. And fear doesn't stay hidden for long. Under enough pressure, it turns hostile. Under enough silence, it turns manipulative. And once you see the shift, the smile fading, the compliment dripping with sarcasm, the nice guy becoming cold, you realize you were never dealing with kindness. You were dealing with a time bomb of repressed resentment. That's why Machiavelli didn't just watch others for fake smiles. He watched himself. He asked, am I being kind or avoiding tension? Am I setting boundaries or keeping peace out of fear? Am I quiet because it's wise or because I don't want to be disliked? Because if the answer was fear, he stopped. He faced the tension. He said no. He let people dislike him and became stronger for it. You want power. Then kill the part of you that wants to be liked by everyone. Stop smiling when you mean no. Stop agreeing to avoid discomfort. Real strength is when you can say no, set boundaries, and face judgment without shrinking. Because once you can do that, your presence becomes heavier than applause. Your silence becomes louder than approval. And the weak, they'll orbit you, craving the stability you built by burning the need to please. He can't stop talking, can't stop posting, can't stop turning every small victory into a story, every gathering into a stage. He's always on, always looking for an audience, even when no one's watching. And Machiavelli would have known without a doubt this is not a strong man. This is a man addicted to the illusion of relevance. Display addiction is not just vanity. It's not simply about wanting attention. It's about needing attention to feel real. And that Machiavelli warned is the most humiliating weakness of all, because it leaves a man not just vulnerable, but utterly controllable. The man who cannot survive without being noticed is already broken. He may look confident, loud, charismatic, assertive, but underneath he is terrified, not of failure, not of rejection, but of invisibility. He believes that if the spotlight moves away, he ceases to exist, that without praise, likes, compliments, or applause, he has no value. This is what Machiavelli called identity rot, when a man's self-worth is entirely built on external reaction. He doesn't know who he is in silence, so he performs louder and louder in noise. He isn't guided by principle, but by perception. And as Machiavelli knew well, perception is the leash of the weak. You've seen this man. He exaggerates his wins. He fabricates status. He posts achievements not to share, but to be envied. He enters a room and scans it not for allies or threats, but for witnesses. And if no one notices him, he panics, because silence to him is death. But here's the brutal truth. This man is not just annoying. He's dangerous to himself and to anyone who depends on him. Because the moment he stops being the center of attention, he spirals. And in that spiral, he'll do anything: lie, betray, expose secrets, sabotage allies just to be seen again. Machiavelli understood this instinct like a predator understands the scent of fear. He saw these men in royal courts and political circles. Men who smiled wide, spoke loud, and chased every camera, but who beneath the surface were empty, hollow, desperate, and desperate men can be led like children. Machiavelli never challenged them directly. He never told them to be quiet or warned them of their weakness. He did something far more sinister. He gave them what they wanted: a stage. He let them speak at meetings. He let them take credit for ideas that served his goals. He praised them in public. Never too much, just enough to make them come back for more. Because once a man needs your attention, you own him. He'll never question your influence. He'll never rebel, because rebellion would risk the very thing he's addicted to: your validation. He may wear the costume of leadership, but behind the scenes, you're the one writing the script. That's how empires are built, not by force, but by feeding the egos of the empty. Machiavelli didn't fear these men. He weaponized them. Because they didn't need to be conquered, they needed to be noticed. So how do you spot display addiction today? It's in the man who always posts after the gym, the one who name drops every connection, the one who interrupts to impress, the one who cannot go a week without being seen by someone somewhere. His energy is loud, but his foundation is brittle. He's terrified of irrelevance, and irrelevance is the pressure point Machiavelli would press every time. If you ever want to break a man like this, don't attack him. Ignore him, withdraw the attention, cut off the applause, make him feel invisible, and watch how fast he crumbles. Because while strong men train in silence and build in private, the weak man can't last 5 minutes without being noticed. He's not driven by vision. He's driven by validation withdrawal. And this Machiavelli knew is the greatest difference between strength and spectacle. The strong man waits, sharpens, observes. He enters quietly and speaks when it matters. But when he does, the room listens, because he's not performing, he's declaring. His power is felt, not displayed. His authority is real, not rented from attention. If you want to become this man, kill the need to be seen. Train without posting. Decide without announcing. Lead without demanding recognition. The less you crave attention, the more powerful your presence becomes. Because when you no longer need the spotlight, you become the one who controls where it shines. That's what Machiavelli mastered, not just seeing weakness, but understanding how to turn it into a weapon. And nothing is more useful than a man who needs to be admired, because he'll do anything for approval, even sell his soul. And while he dances for the crowd, you build quietly in the shadows, until one day he realizes he was never the leader. He was just the entertainment. In a world driven by likes, followers, and constant noise, one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into is believing that your worth depends on being seen. But Machiavelli's lesson is clear: the more you need attention, the easier you are to control. Because the man who's addicted to display will sacrifice anything. His values, his loyalty, even his dignity, just to stay relevant. The powerful man doesn't chase visibility. He chooses invisibility until it's time to strike. He doesn't post every win talk over every conversation or show off every move. Instead, he lets others underestimate him while he sharpens in silence. And when he speaks, he's not asking to be seen. He's reminding the world that he was always watching. So here's the practical truth. The less you need external validation, the more internal strength you build. The next time you feel the urge to prove yourself online, overshare in a conversation, or demand recognition, pause. Ask yourself, is this driven by conviction or fear? True respect comes not from what you show, but from what you withhold. And in a world full of men performing, the one who remains calm, quiet, and unshaken becomes the standard others measure against. Master that, and you won't just have attention, you'll have power.